everyone, and welcome back to Papayas Perusal. We're going to be continuing our reading of The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Let's see if we can get through 2 chapters today. Chapter 2. As they entered, they saw Dorian Gray. He was seated at the piano with his back turned to them, turning over the pages of a volume of Schumann's Forced Scenes. "You must lend me these, Basil," he cried. "I want to learn them. They are perfectly charming." "That entirely depends on how you sit today, Dorian." "Oh, I am tired of sitting, and I don't want a life-sized portrait of myself," answered the lad, swinging round on the music stool in a willful, petulant manner. When he caught sight of Lord Henry, a faint blush colored his cheeks for a moment, and he started up. "I beg your pardon, Basil, but I didn't know you had anyone with you." "This is Lord Henry Wotton, Dorian, an old Oxford friend of mine. I have just been telling him what a capital sitter you were, and now you have spoiled everything." "You have not spoiled my pleasure in meeting you, Mr. Gray," said Lord Henry, stepping forward and extending his hand. "My aunt has often spoken to me about you. You are one of her favorites, and I am afraid one of her victims also." "I am in Lady Agatha's black boots at present," answered Dorian with a funny look of penitence. "I promised to go to a club in Whitechapel with her last Tuesday, and I really forgot all about it. We were to have played a duet together, 3 duets, I believe. I don't know what she will say to me. I am far too frightened to recall." "Oh, I'll make your peace with my aunt. She is quite devoted to you, and I don't think it really matters about your not being there." The audience probably thought it was a duet. When Aunt Agatha sits down to the piano, she makes quite enough noise for 2 people. "That's very horrid of her, and not very nice to me," answered Dorian, laughing. Lord Henry looked at him. Yes, he was certainly wonderfully handsome, with his fine, curved scarlet lips, his frank blue eyes, his crisp gold hair. There was something in his face that made one trust him at once. All the candor of youth was there, as well as all youth's passionate purity. One felt that he had kept himself unspotted from the world. No wonder Basil Hallward worshipped him. "You are too charming to go in for philanthropy, Mr. Gray. Far too charming." And Lord Henry flung himself down on the divan and opened his cigarette case. The painter had been busy mixing his colors and getting his brushes ready. He was looking worried, and when he heard Lord Henry's last remark, he glanced at him, hesitant for a moment, and then said, "Harry, I want to finish the picture today. Would you think it awfully rude of me if I asked you to go away?" Lord Henry smiled and looked at Dorian Gray. "Am I to go, Mr. Gray?" he asked. "Oh, please don't, Lord Henry. I see that Basil is in one of his sulky moods, and I can't bear him when he sulks. Besides, I want you to tell me why I should not go in for philanthropy. Oh my goodness." "I don't know that I should tell you that, Mr. Gray. It is so tedious a subject that one would have to talk seriously about it. But I certainly shall not run away, now that you have asked me to stop. You don't really mind, Basil, do you? You have often told me that you liked your sitters to have someone to chat to." Howard bit his lip. "If Dorian wishes it, of course you must stay. Dorian's whims are lost to everybody except himself." Lord Henry took up his hat and gloves. "You are very pressing, Basil, but I am afraid I must go. I have promised to meet a man at the Orleans. Goodbye, Mr. Gray. Come and see me some afternoon in Curzon Street. I am nearly always at home at 5 o'clock. Write to me when you are coming. I should be sorry to miss you." "Basil," cried Dorian Gray, "if Lord Henry Wotton goes, I shall go too. You never open your lips while you are painting, and it is horribly dull standing on a platform and trying to look pleasant. Ask him to stay. I insist upon it." "Stay, Harry, to oblige oblige Dorian and to oblige me, said Howard, gazing intently at his picture. It is quite true. I never talk when I am working, and never listen either, and it must be dreadfully tedious for my unfortunate sitters. I beg you to stay. But what about my man at the Orleans? The painter laughed. I don't think there will be any difficulty about that. Sit down again, Harry, and now, Dorian, get up on the platform. And don't move about too much or pay any attention to what Lord Henry says. He has a very bad influence over all his friends, with the single exception of myself. Dorian Gray stepped up on the dais. Days. With the air of a young Greek martyr, and made a little mow of discontent to Lord Henry, to whom he had rather taken a fancy. He was so unlike Basil. They made a delightful contrast, and he had such a beautiful voice. After a few moments he said to him, Have you really a very bad influence, Lord Henry, as bad as Basil says? There is no such thing as a good influence, Mr. Gray. All influence is immoral from the scientific point of view. Why? Because to influence a person is to give him one's own soul. He does not think his natural thoughts or burn with his natural passions. His virtues are not real to him. His sins, if there are such things as sins, are borrowed. He becomes an echo of someone else's music, an actor of a part that has not been written for him. The aim of life is self-development, to realize one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. People are afraid of themselves nowadays. They have forgotten the highest of all duties, the duty that one owes to oneself. Of course they are charitable. They feed the hungry and clothe the beggar. But their own souls starve and are naked. Courage is gone out of our race. Perhaps we never really had it. The terror of society, which is the basis of all morals. The terror of God. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, I'm about to sneeze. Sorry. It didn't come out. I'm sorry about that. That must have been. I couldn't mute the mic in time. Oh. That was about to be like a violent sneeze, too. Okay. Apologies, off topic. Where are we? The terror of God, which is the secret of religion. These are the two things that govern us, and yet, just turn your head a little more to the right, Dorian, like a good boy, said the painter, deep in his work, and consciously only that a look had come into the lad's face that he had never seen there before. And yet, continued Lord Henry in his low, musical voice, and with that graceful wave of the hand that was always so characteristic of him, and that yet even in his Eton days. I believe that if one man were to live out his life fully and completely, were to give form to every feeling, expression to every thought, reality to every dream, I believe that the world would gain such a fresh impulse of joy that we would forget all the maladies of medievalism. Oh, sorry. Medievalism. One of those. And return to the Hellenic idea that something finer, richer than the Hellenic idea it may be. But the bravest man among us is afraid of himself. The mutilation of the savage has its tragic survival in the self-denial that mars our lives. We are punished for our refusals. Every impulse that we strive to strangle broods in the mind and poisons us. The body sins once and is done with its sin, for action is a mode of purification. Nothing remains then but the recollection of a pleasure or the luxury of a regret. The only way to get rid of temptation is to yield it. Yield to it, resist it, and your soul grows sick with longing for the things it has forbidden to itself. With desire for what is monstrous, laws have made monstrous and unlawful. It has been said that the great events of the world take place in the brain. is in the brain, and the brain only, that the great sins of the world take place also. You, Mr. Gray, you yourself, with your rose-red youth and your rose-white boyhood. You have had passions that have made you afraid, thoughts that have filled you with terror, daydreams and sleeping dreams whose mere memory might stain your cheek with shame. Stop, faltered Dorian Gray. Stop, you bewilder me. I don't know what to say. There is some answer to you, but I cannot find it. Don't speak. Let me think, or rather, let me try not to think. For nearly 10 minutes he stood there motionless, with parted lips and eyes strangely bright. He was dimly conscious that entirely fresh influences were at work within him, yet they seemed to him to have come really from himself. The few words that Basil's friend had said to him words spoken by chance, no doubt, and with willful paradox in them, had touched some secret chord that had never been touched before, but that he felt was now vibrating and throbbing to curious pulses. Music had stirred him like that. Music had troubled him many times, but music was not articulate. It was not a new world, but rather another chaos that had created in us. Words, mere words. How terrible they were. How clear and vivid and cruel. One could not escape from them, and yet what a subtle magic there was in them. They seemed to be able to give a plastic form to formless things, and to have a music of their own, as sweet as that of viol or flute. Mere words. Was there anything so real as words? Yes, there had been things in his boyhood that he had not understood. He understood them now. Life suddenly became fierily colored to him. It seemed to him that he had been walking in fire. Why had he not known it? With his subtle smile, Lord Henry watched him. He knew the precise psychological moment when to say nothing. He felt intensely interested. He was amazed at the sudden impression that his words had produced, in remembering a book they had read when he was 16, a book which had revealed to him much that he had not known before. He wondered whether Dorian Gray was passing through a similar experience. Had he merely shot an arrow into the air, and had it hit the mark? How fascinating the lad was. Howard painted away with that marvelous bold touch of his, that the true refinement and perfect delicacy that in art, at any rate, comes only from strength. He was unconscious of the silence. Basil, I am tired of standing, cried Dorian Gray suddenly. I must go out and sit in the garden. They are stifling here. My dear fellow, I am sorry. When I am painting, I cannot think of anything else. But you never sat better. You are perfectly still, and I have got the effect I wanted. The half-parted lips and the bright look in the eyes. I don't know what Harry has been saying to you, but he has certainly made you have the most wonderful expression. I suppose he has been paying you compliments. You mustn't believe a word that he says. He certainly has not been paying me compliments. Perhaps that is the reason that I don't believe anything he has told me. You know you believe it all, said Lord Henry, looking at him with his dreamy, languorous eyes. I will go out to the garden with you. It is horribly hot in the studio. Basil, let us have something iced to drink and something with strawberries in it. I apologize if the recording is a little scuffed. My sibling is kind of screaming across the room. Across the house. Perhaps it'll be better if I talk a little closer into the mic. Certainly, Harry. Just touch the bell, and when Parker comes, I will tell him what you want. I have got to work up this background, so I will join you later on. form for painting than I am today. This is going to be my masterpiece. It is my masterpiece as it stands. Lord Henry went out to the garden and found Dorian Gray burying his face in the great cool lilac blossoms, furiously drinking in their perfume as if it had been wine. He came close to him and put his hand upon his shoulder. "You are quite right to do that," he murmured. "Nothing can cure the soul but the senses, just as nothing can cure the senses but the soul." The lad started and drew back. He was bareheaded, and the leaves had tossed his rebellious curls and tingled all their gilded dreads. There was a look of fear in his eyes, such as people have when they are suddenly awakened. His finely chiseled nostrils quivered, and some hidden nerve shook the scarlet of his lips and left them trembling. "Yes," continued Lord Henry. "That is one of the greatest secrets to life, to cure the soul by means of the senses, and the senses by means of the soul. You are a wonderful creation. You know more than you think you know, just as you know less than you want to know." Dorian Gray frowned and turned his head away. He could not help liking the tall, graceful young man who was standing by him. His romantic, olive-colored face and worn expression interested him. There was something in his low, languid voice that was absolutely fascinating. His cool, white and flower-like hands even had a curious charm. They moved as he spoke, like music, and seemed to have a language of their own. But he felt afraid of him, and ashamed of being afraid. Why had it been left for a stranger to reveal him to himself? He had known Basil Hallward for months, but the friendship between them had never altered him. Suddenly there had come someone across his life who seemed to have disclosed to him his life's mystery, and yet, what was there to be afraid of? He was not a schoolboy or a girl. It was absurd to be frightening. Oh, absurd to be frightened. "Let us go and sit in the shade," said Lord Henry. "Parker has brought out the drinks." Sorry. I was yawning. Parker has brought out the drinks, and if you stay any longer in this glare, you will be quite spoiled. And Basil will never paint you again. You really must not allow yourself to become sunburnt. It would be unbecoming. "What can it matter?" cried Dorian Gray, laughing as he sat down on the seat at the end of the garden. "It should matter everything to you, Mr. Gray." "Why?" "Because you have the most marvelous youth, and the youth is the one thing worth having. I don't feel that, Lord Henry." "No, you don't feel it now. Someday, when you are old and wrinkled and ugly, when the thought has seared your forehead with its lines, and your passion branded your lips with its hideous fires, you will feel it terribly. Now, wherever you go, you charm the world. Will it always be so?" "You have a wonderfully beautiful face, Mr. Gray. Don't frown. You have. And beauty is a form of genius, and higher, indeed, than genius, as it needs no explanation. It is of the great facts of the world, like sunlight or springtime, or the reflection in dark waters of the silver shell that we call the moon. It cannot be unquestioned. It has its divine right of sovereignty. It makes princes of those who have it. You smile. Ah, when you have lost it, you won't smile. People say sometimes that beauty is only superficial. That may be so, but at least it is not so superficial as thought is. To me, the beauty is the wonder of wonders. It is only shallow people who do not judge by appearances. True mystery of the world is the visible, not the invisible. Yes, Mr. Gray, the gods have been good to you, but what the gods give, they quickly take away. You have only a few years in which to live really perfectly and fully. When your youth goes, your beauty will go with it, and then you will suddenly discover that there are no triumphs left for you, or have to content yourself with those mean triumphs that the memory of your past will make it more bitter than defeats. Every month, as it wanes, brings you nearer to something dreadful. Time is jealous of you and wars against your lilies and your roses. You will become shallow and hollow-cheeked and dull-eyed. You will suffer horribly. Realize your youth while you have it. Don't squander the gold of your days, listening to the tedious, trying to improve the hopeless failure, or giving away your ignorance to the ignorant. Oh. Giving away your life to the ignorant, the common, and the vulgar. These are the sickly aims, the false ideals of our age. Live the wonderful life that is in you. Let nothing be lost upon you. Be always searching for new sensations. Be afraid of nothing and new hedonism. That is what our century wants. You might be its visible symbol. With your personality, there is nothing you could not do. The world belongs to you for a reason. The moment I met you, I saw that you were quite unconscious of what you really are, of what you really might be. There was so much in you that charmed me that I felt I must tell you something about yourself. I thought of how tragic it would be if you were wasted. For there is such a little time that your youth will last such a little time. The common hill flowers wither, but they blossom again. The laburnum will be as yellow next June as it is now. In a month there will be purple stars on the clematis, and a year after year the green night of its leaves will hold in purple stars. It's purple stars, but we never get back our youth. The pulse of joy that beats us at 20 becomes sluggish. Our limbs fail, our senses rot. We degenerate into hideous puppets, haunted by the memory of the passions of which we are too much afraid, and the exquisite temptations that we had not the courage to yield to. Youth. There is absolutely nothing in this world but youth. Dorian Gray listened, open-eyed and wondering. The spray of the lilac fell from his hand upon the gravel. A furry bee came and buzzed round him for a moment. Then it began to scramble all over the oval stellated globe of the tiny blossoms. He watched it with a strange interest in trivial things that we tried to develop when things of high import make us afraid. Or when we are stirred by some new emotion for which we cannot find expression, or when some thought that terrifies us lays sudden siege to the brain and calls on us to yield. After a time the bee flew away, and he saw it creeping into the stained trumpet of Dorian, convolvulus. The flowers seemed to quiver, and then sway gently to and fro. Suddenly the painter appeared at the door of the studio and made staccato signs for them to come in. They turned to each other and smiled. "I am waiting," he cried. "Do come in. The light is quite perfect, and you can bring your drinks." They rose up and squandered down the walk together. Two green and white butterflies fluttered past them, and in the pear tree at the corner of the garden a thrush began to sing. "You are glad you have met me, Mr. Gray," said Lord Henry, looking at him. "Yes, I am glad now. I wonder, shall I always be glad?" "Always. That is a dreadful word. It makes me shudder when I hear it. Women are so fond of using it. They spoil every romance by trying to make it last forever. It is a meaningless word, too. The only difference between a caprice and a lifelong passion is that the caprice lasts a little longer." As they entered the studio, Dorian Gray put his hand upon Lord Henry's arm. "In that case, let our friendship be a caprice," he murmured, flashing at his own boldness, then stepped up on the platform and resumed his pose. Lord Henry flung himself into a large wicker armchair and watched him. The sweep and dash of the brush on the canvas made the only sound that broke the stillness, except when, now and then, Howard stood back to look at his work from a distance. In the slanting beams that streamed through the open doorway, the dust danced and was golden. Then it scent of the roses seemed to brood over everything. After about a quarter of an hour, Howard stopped painting, looked for a long time at Dorian Gray, and then for a long time at the picture, biting the end of one of his huge brushes and frowning. "It is quite finished," he cried at last, and stooping down, he wrote his name in long vermilion letters on the left-hand corner of the canvas. Lord Henry came over and examined the picture. It was certainly a wonderful work of art, and a wonderful likeness as well. "My dear fellow, I congratulate you most warmly," he said. "It is the finest portrait of modern times. Mr. Gray, come over and look at it yourself." The lad started as if awakened from some dream. "Is it really finished?" he murmured, stepping down from the platform. "Quite finished," said the painter. "And you have sat splendidly today. I am awfully obliged to you." "That is entirely due to me," broke in Lord Henry. "Isn't it, Mr. Gray?" Dorian made no answer, but passed listlessly in front of his picture and turned towards it. When he drew back, and his cheeks flushed for a moment of pleasure. A look of joy came into his eyes, as if he had recognized himself for the first time. He stood there motionless and in wonder, dimly conscious that Howard was speaking to him, but not catching the meaning of his words. The sense of his own beauty came on him like a revelation. He had never felt it before. Basil Howard's compliments had seemed to him to be merely the charming exaggeration of friendship. He had listened to them, laughed at them, forgotten them. They had not influenced his nature. Then had come Lord Henry Wotton with a strange panegyric on youth, his terrible warning of its brevity, that had stirred him at the time, and now, as he stood gazing at the shadow of his own loveliness, the full reality of the description flashed across him. Yes, there would be a day when his face would be wrinkled and wizened, his eyes dim and colorless, the grace of his figure broken and deformed. The scarlet would pass away from his lips and the gold steal from his hair. The life that was to make his soul would mar his body. It would become dreadful, hideous, and uncouth. As he thought of it, a sharp pang of pain struck through him like a knife and made each delicate fiber of his nature quiver. His eyes deepened into amethyst, and across them came a mist of tears. He felt as if a hand of ice had been laid upon his heart. "Don't you like it?" cried Howard at last, stung a little by the lad's silence, not understanding what it meant. "Of course he likes it," said Lord Henry. "Who wouldn't like it? It is one of the greatest things in modern art. I'll give you anything you like to ask for it. I must have it." "It is not my property, Harry." "Whose property is it?" "Dorian's, of course," answered the painter. "He is a very lucky fellow." "How sad it is," murmured Dorian, with his eyes still fixed upon his own portrait. "How sad it is. I shall grow old and horrible and dreadful, but this picture will remain always young. It will never be older than this particular day of June, if it were only the other way. If it were I who was to be always young, and the picture that was to grow old, for that I would give everything. Yes, there is nothing in the whole world I would not give. I would give my soul for that." "You would hardly care for such an arrangement, Basil," cried Lord Henry, laughing. "It would be rather hard lines on your work." "I should object very strongly, Harry," said Howard. Dorian Gray turned and looked at him. "I believe you would, Basil. You like your art better than your friends. I am no more to you than a green bronze figure. Hardly as much, I dare say." The painter stared in amazement. It was so unlike Dorian to speak like that. What had happened? He seemed quite angry. His face was flushed and his cheeks burning. "Yes," he continued, "I am less to you than your ivory Hermes or your silver fawn. You always liked them, or you will like them always. How long will you like me? Till I have my first wrinkle, I suppose. I know now that when one loses one's good looks, whatever they may be, one loses everything. Your picture has taught me that, Lord Henry. Wotton is perfectly right. Youth is the only thing worth having. When I find that I am growing old, I shall kill myself. Sorry, I must pause. I need to sneeze. shall never have such another. You are not jealous of material things, are you? You are finer than many of them. I am jealous of everything whose beauty does not lie. I am jealous of the portrait you have painted of me. Why should I keep it? What I must lose. Why should I keep what I must lose? Every moment that passes takes something from me and gives something to it. Oh, if it were only the other way, if the picture could change and I could always be what I am now. Why did you paint it? It will mock me someday, mock me horribly. The hot tears welled into his eyes. He tore his hand away, and flinging himself on the divan, he buried his face in the cushions as though he was praying. This is your doing, Harry, said the painter bitterly. Lord Henry shrugged his shoulders. It's the real Dorian Gray, that is all. It is not. If it is not, what have I to do with it? You should have gone away when I asked you, he muttered. I stayed when you asked me, was Lord Henry's answer. Harry, I cannot quarrel with my two best friends at once, but between you both you have made me hate the finest piece of work I have ever done, and I will destroy it. What is it but canvas and color? I will not let it come across our 3 lives and mar them. Dorian Gray lifted his golden head from the pillow and with pallid face and tear-stained eyes looked at him as he walked over to the deal painting table that was set beneath the high curtained window. What was he doing there? His fingers were straying about amongst the litter of tin tubes and dry brushes, seeking for something. Yes, it was for the long palette knife with its thin blade of lithe steel. He had found it at last. He was going to rip up the canvas. With a stifled sob, the lad leaped from the couch and, rushing over to Howard, tore the knife out of his hand and flung it to the end of the studio. Don't, Basil, don't, he cried. It would be murder. I'm glad you appreciate my work at last, Dorian, said the painter coldly when he had recovered from his surprise. I never thought you would. Appreciate it. I am in love with it, Basil. It is part of myself. I feel that. Well, as soon as you are dry, you shall be varnished and framed and sent home. Then you can do whatever you like with yourself. And he walked across the room and rang the bell for tea. You will have tea, of course, Dorian, and so will you, Harry, or do you object to such simple pleasures? I do adore simple pleasures, said Lord Henry. They are the last refuge of the complex, but I do not like scenes, except on the stage. What absurd fellows you are, both of you. I wonder who it was to find man as a rational animal. It was the most premature definition ever given. Man is many things, but he is not rational. I am glad he is not, after all, though I wish you chaps would not squabble over the picture. You'd much better let me have it, Basil. The silly boy doesn't really want it, and I really do. If you let anyone have it but me, Basil, I shall never forgive you, cried Dorian Gray. And I don't allow people to call me a silly boy. You know the picture is yours, Dorian. I gave it to you before it existed. And you know you have been a little silly, Mr. Gray, and that you don't really object to being reminded that you are extremely young. I should have objected very strong this morning, Lord Henry. This morning. You have lived since then. There came a knock at the door, and the butler entered with a tea tray and sat down upon a small Japanese table. There was a rattle of cups and saucers and the hissing of a fluted Georgian urn. 2 globe-shaped china dishes were brought in by a page. Dorian Gray went over and poured out the tea. The 2 men sauntered languidly over to the table and examined what was under the covers. Let us go to the theater tonight, said Lord Henry. There is sure to be something on, somewhere. I have promised to dine at White's, but it is only with an old friend, so I can send him a wire to say that I am ill, or that I am prevented from coming in consequence of a subsequent engagement. I think that would be a rather nice excuse. It would all the surprise of candor. It is such a bore putting on one's dress clothes, muttered Hallward. Excuse me. And when one has them on, they are so horrid. Yes, answered Lord Henry dreamily. The costume of the 19th century is detestable. It is so somber. So depressing. Sin is the only real color element left in modern life. You must really not say things like that before Dorian, Henry. But what which story? The one who was pouring out tea for us, or the one in the picture? Before either. I should like to come to the theater with you, Lord Henry, said the lad. Then you shall come, and you will come too, Basil, won't you? I can't, really. I would sooner not. I have a lot of work to do. Well, then, you and I will go alone, Mr. Gray. I should like that awfully. The painter bit his lip and walked over, cup in hand, to the picture. I shall stay with the real Dorian, he said sadly. It is the real Dorian, cried the original, the portrait strolling across him. I really like that. Yes, you are just like that. How wonderful, Basil. At least you are like it in appearance, but will never alter, sighed Howard. That is something. What a fuss people make about fidelity, exclaimed Lord Henry. Why, even in love is it purely a question for physiology. It has nothing to do with our own will. Young men want to be faithful and are not. Old men want to be faithless and cannot. That is all one can say. Don't go to the theater tonight, Dorian, said Howard. Stop and dine with me. I can't, Basil. Why? Because I've promised Lord Henry Wotton to go with him. He won't like you the better for keeping your promises. He always breaks his own. I beg you not to go. Dorian Gray laughed and shook his head. I entreat you. The lad hesitated and looked over at Lord Henry, who was watching them from the tea table with an amused smile. I must go, Basil, he answered. Very well, Sir Howard, and he went over and laid down his cup on the tray. It is rather late, and as you have to dress, you had better lose no time. Goodbye, Harry. Goodbye, Dorian. Come and see me soon. Come tomorrow. Certainly. You won't forget. No, of course not, cried Dorian. And Harry, yes, Basil, remember what I asked you when we were in the garden this morning? I have forgotten it. I trust you. I wish I could trust myself, said Lord Henry, laughing. Come, Mr. Gray. My hansom is outside, and I can drop you at your own place. Goodbye, Basil. It has been a most interesting afternoon. As the door closed behind them, the painter flung himself down on a sofa, and a look of pain came into his face. We're going to see how far we can get into chapter 3. At 12:30 next day, Lord Henry Wotton strolled from Curzon Street over to the Albany to call on his uncle, Lord Fermor, a genial, if somewhat rough-mannered old bachelor, whom the outside world called selfish, because it derived no particular benefit from him, but it was considered generous by society as he fed the people who amused him. His father had been our ambassador at Madrid when Isabel was young, and prim, unthought of, he had retired from the diplomatic service in a capricious moment of annoyance at not being offered the embassy at Paris, a post to which he considered that he was fully entitled by reason of his birth. His indolence, the good English of his dispatches, and his inordinate passion for pleasure, the son who had been his father's secretary had assigned, along with his chief, somewhat foolishly as was thought at the time, and on succeeding some months later to the title, he had set himself to the serious study of the great aristocratic art of doing absolutely nothing. He had 2 large houses, but preferred to live in chambers, as it was less trouble, and took most of his meals at the club. At his club, he paid some attention to the management of his collieries in the Midland countries, excusing himself for the taint of industry on the ground that one advantage of having coal was that it enabled a gentleman to afford the decency of burning wood on his own hearth. In politics, he was a Tory, except when the Tories were in office, during which period he roundly abused them for being a pack of radicals. He was a hero to his valet, who bullied him, and a terror to most of his relations, whom he bullied in turn. Only England could have produced him, and he always said that the country was going to the dogs. His principles were out of date, but there was a good deal to be said for his prejudices. When Lord Henry entered the room, he found his uncle sitting in a rough shooting coat, smoking a cheroot and grumbling over the Times. Well, Harry, said the old gentleman, what brings you out so early? I thought you were Oh, I thought you dandies never got up till 2, and were not visible until 5. Pure family affection, I assure you, Uncle George. I want to get something out of you. Money, I suppose, said Lord Ferner, making a wry face. Well, sit down and tell me all about it. Young people nowadays imagine that money is everything. Yes, murmured Lord Henry, settling his buttonhole in his coat. And when they grow older, they know it, but I don't want money. It is only people who pay their bills who want that, Uncle George, and I never pay mine. Credit is the capital of a younger son, and one lives charmingly upon it. Besides, I always deal with Dartmoor's tradesmen, and consequently they never bother me. What I want is information, not useful information, of course. Useless information. Well, I can tell you anything that is in an English blue book, Harry. Although those fellows nowadays write a lot of nonsense. When I was in the diplomatic, things were much better, but here they let them in by examination. What can you expect? Examinations, sir, are pure humbug from beginning to end. If a man is a gentleman, he knows quite enough, and if he is not a gentleman, whatever he knows is bad for him. Mr. Dorian Gray does not belong to the books, Uncle George, said Lord Henry languidly. Mr. Dorian Gray, who is he? Asked Lord Fermor, knitting his bushy white eyebrows. That is what I have come to learn, Uncle George. Or rather, I know who he is. He is the last Lord Keslow's grandson. His mother was a Devereux, Lady Margaret Devereux. I want you to tell me about his mother. What was she like? Whom did she marry? You have known nearly everybody in your time, so you might have known her. I am very much interested in Mr. Gray at present. I have only just met him. Kelso's grandson, echoed the old gentleman. Kelso's grandson. Of course, I knew his mother intimately. I believe I was at her christening. She was an extraordinarily beautiful girl. Margaret Devereux had made all the men frantic by running away with a penniless young fellow, a mere nobody, sir, a subaltern in a foot regiment, or something of that kind. Certainly, I remember the whole thing as if it happened yesterday. The poor chap was killed in a duel at Spa a few months after the marriage. There was an ugly story about it. They said Kelso got some rascally adventurer, some Belgian brute, to insult his son-in-law in public. Paid him, sir, to do it. Paid him, and that the fellow spitted his man as if he had been a pigeon. The thing was hushed up, but egad, Kelso ate his chop alone at the club for some time afterwards. He brought his daughter back with him, I was told, and she never spoke to him again. Oh yes, it was a bad business. The girl died too, died within a year. So she left a son, did she? I had forgotten that. What sort of boy is he? If he is like his mother, he must be a good-looking chap. He is very good-looking, assented Lord Henry. I hope he will fall into proper hands, continued the old man. He should have a pot of money waiting for him if Kelso did the right thing by him. His mother had money too. All the Selby property came to her through her grandfather. Her grandfather hated Kelso. Thought him a mean dog. He was too. Came to Madrid once when I was there. Egad, I was ashamed of him. The Queen used to ask me about the English noble who was always quarreling with the cabmen about their fares. They made quite a story of it. I didn't dare show my face at the court for a month. I hope he treated his grandson better than he did the Jarvies. I don't know, answered Lord Henry. I fancy that the boy will be well off. He is not of age yet. He has Selby, I know. He told me so. And his mother was very beautiful. Margaret Devereux was one of the loveliest creatures I ever saw, Harry. What on earth induced her to behave as she did, I never could understand. She could have married anybody she chose. Carlington was mad after her. She was romantic, though. All the women of that family were. The men were a poor lot, but egad, the women were wonderful. Carlington went on his knees to her, told me so himself. She laughed at him, and there wasn't a girl in London at the time who wasn't after him. And by the way, Harry, talking about silly marriages, what is this humbug your father tells me about Dartmouth wanting to marry an American? Ain't English girls good enough for him? It is rather fashionable to marry Americans just now, Uncle George. I'll back Englishwoman against the world, Harry, said Lord Fermor, striking the table with his fist. The betting is on the Americans. They don't last, I am told, muttered his uncle. A long engagement exhausts them, but they are capital at a steeplechase. They take things flying. I don't think Dartmouth has a chance. Who are her people? Grumbled the old gentleman. Has she got any? Lord Henry shook his head. American girls are as clever at concealing their parents as English women are at concealing their past, he said, rising to go. They are pork packers, I suppose. I hope so, Uncle George, for Dartmouth's sake. I am told that pork packing is the most lucrative profession in America after politics. Is she pretty? She behaves as if she were beautiful. Most American women do. It is the secret of their charm. Why can't these American women stay in their own country? They are always telling us that it is the paradise for women. It is. That is the reason why, like Eve, they are so excessively anxious to get out of it, said Lord Henry. Goodbye, Uncle George. I shall be late for lunch if I stop any longer. Thanks for giving me the information I wanted. I always like to know everything about my new friends, and nothing about my old ones. Where are you lunching, Harry? At Aunt Agatha's. Oh gosh. At Aunt Agatha's. I have asked myself and Mr. Gray. He is her latest protege. Huh. Tell your Aunt Agatha, Harry, not to bother me any more with her charity appeals. I am sick of them. Why, the good woman thinks that I have nothing to do but to write checks for silly fads. All right, Uncle George, I'll tell her, but it won't have any effect. Philanthropic people lose all sense of humanity. It is their distinguishing characteristic. The old gentleman growled approvingly and rang the bell for a servant. Lord Henry passed up the low arcade. Lord Henry passed up the low arcade into Burlington Street and turned his steps in the direction of Berkeley Square. So that was the story of Dorian Gray's parentage. Crudely as it had been told to him, it had yet stirred him by its suggestion of a strange, almost modern romance. A beautiful woman risking everything for a mad passion, a few wild weeks of happiness, cut shortly by a hideous, treacherous crime, months of voiceless agony, and then a child born in pain, the mother snatched away by death, the boy left to solitude and the tyranny of an old and loveless man. Yes, it was an interesting background. It posed the lad, made him more perfect, as it were. Behind every exquisite thing that existed, there was something tragic. Worlds had to be in travail, that the meanest flower might blow, and how charming he had been at dinner the night before. As with startled eyes and lips parted in frightened pleasure, he had sat opposite to him at the club, the red candle shades straining to a richer rose, the waking wonder of his face. Talking to him was like playing upon an exquisite violin. He answered to every touch and thrill of the bow. There was something terribly enthralling in the exercise of influence. No other activity was like it. To protect one's soul to some gracious form and let it tarry there for a moment. To hear one's own intellectual views echoed back to one with all the added music of passion and youth. To one's temperament into another as though it were a subtle fluid or a strange perfume. There was a real joy in that. Perhaps the most satisfying joy left to us in an age so limited and vulgar as our own. An age grossly carnal in its pleasures and grossly common in its aims. He was a marvelous type, too, this lad, whom by so curious a chance he had met in Basil's studio, or could be fashioned into a marvelous type at any rate. Grace was his in the white purity of boyhood, and beauty such as old Greek's marbles kept for us. There was nothing that one could not do with him. He could be made a titan or a toy. What a pity it was that such beauty was destined to fade. In Basil, from a psychological point of view, how interesting it was. The new manner in art, the fresh mode of looking at life, suggested so strangely by the merely visible presence of one who was unconscious of it all. And the silent spirit that dwelt in dim woodland and walked unseen in open field, suddenly showing herself, dryad-like and not afraid, because in his soul who sought for her there had been awakened that wonderful vision to which alone are wonderful things revealed. The mere shapes and patterns of things becoming, as it were, refined and gaining a kind of symbolic value, as though they were themselves patterns of some other and more perfect form whose shadow they made real. How strange it all was. He remembered something like it in history. Was it not Plato? The artist and thought who had first analyzed it. Was it not, I'm gonna butcher this, was it not Buonarroti who had carved it in the colored marbles of a sonnet sequence? But in our own century it was strange, yes. He would try to be Dorian Gray. What, without knowing it, the lad was to the painter who had fashioned the wonderful portrait. He would seek to dominate him, had already, indeed, half done so. He would make that wonderful spirit his own. There was something fascinating in this son of love and death. Suddenly he stopped and glanced up at the houses. He found that he had passed his own some distance, and smiling to himself, turned back. When he entered the somewhat somber hall, the butler told him that they had gone into lunch. He gave one of the footmen his hat and stick and passed into the dining room. Like as usual, Harry, cried his aunt, shaking her head at him. He invented a facile excuse, and having taken the vacant seat next to her, looked round to see who was there. Dorian bowed him shyly from the end of the table, a flush of pleasure stealing into his cheek. Opposite was the Duchess of Harley, a lad of admirably good nature and good temper. Much liked by everyone who knew her, and one of those ample architectural proportions that in women who were not duchesses are described by contemporary historians as stoutness. Next to her sat on her right Sir Thomas Burton, a radical member of Parliament, who followed his leader in public life and in private life followed the best cooks, dining with the Tories and thinking with the Liberals, in accordance with a wise and well-known rule. The post on her left was occupied by Mr. Erskine of Treadley, an old gentleman of considerable German culture, who had fallen, however, into bad habits of silence, having, as he explained once to Lady Agatha, said everything that he had to say before he was 30. His own neighbor was Miss Vandeleur, one of his aunt's oldest friends, a perfect saint amongst women, but so dreadfully dowdy that she remained one of badly bound hymn book. Fortunately for him, she had sighed Lord Fadil, a most intelligent middle-aged mediocrity, as bald as a ministerial statement in the House of Commons, with whom she was conversing in that intensely earnest manner which is the one unpardonable error. As he remarked once himself, that all really good people fall into, and from which none of them ever quite escape. We are talking about poor Dartmoor, Lord Henry, cried the Duchess, nodding pleasantly to him across the table. Do you think you would really marry this fascinating young person? I believe she has made up her mind to propose to him, Duchess. How dreadful, exclaimed Lady Agatha. Really, someone should interfere. I am told, on excellent authority, that her father keeps an American dry goods store, said Sir Thomas Burton, looking supercilious. My uncle has already suggested pork packing, Sir Thomas. Dry goods? What are American dry goods? Asked the Duchess, raising her large hands in wonder and accentuating the verb. American novels, answered Lord Henry, helping himself to some quail. The Duchess looked puzzled. Don't mind him, my dear, whispered Lady Agatha. He never means anything that he says. One moment. Alright, we are back. Sorry, my brother came into the room asking to play video games, which we'll do in a moment. Unfortunately, I'm not going to record those, but maybe later. Where were we? American novels, answered Lord Henry, helping himself to some quail. Don't mind him, my dear. Oh, the Duchess looked puzzled. Sorry. One moment. Okay. The Duchess looked puzzled. Don't mind him, my dear, whispered Lady Agatha. He never means anything that he says. When America was discovered, said the radical member, and he began to give some wearisome facts. Like all people who try to exhaust a subject, he exhausted his listeners. The Duchess sighed and exercised her privilege of interruption. I wish to goodness it never had been discovered at all, she exclaimed. Really, our girls have no chance nowadays. It is most unfair. Perhaps, after all, America never has been discovered, said Mr. Erskine. Where am I? I myself would say that it had merely been detected. Oh, but I have some specimens of the inhabitants, answered the Duchess vaguely. I must confess that most of them are extremely pretty, and they dress well too. They get all their dresses in Paris. I wish I could afford to do the same. They say that when good Americans die, they go to Paris, chuckled Sir Thomas, who had a large wardrobe of humors, cast-off clothes. Really? And where do bad Americans go to when they die? Inquired the Duchess. They go to America, murmured Lord Henry. Sir Thomas frowned. I am afraid that your nephew is prejudiced against that great country, he said to Lady Agatha. I have travelled all over it in cars provided by the directors, who, in such matters, are extremely civil. I assure you that it is an education to visit. But must we really say Chicago in order to be educated? Asked Mr. Erskine plaintively. I don't feel up to the journey. Sir Thomas waved his hand. Mr. Erskine of Tradely has the world on his shelves. We practical men like to see things, not to read about them. The Americans are an extremely interesting people. They are absolutely reasonable. I think that is in their distinguishing characteristic. Yes, Mr. Erskine, absolutely reasonable people, I assure you. There is no nonsense about the Americans. How dreadful, cried Lord Henry. I can stand brute force, but brute reason is quite unbearable. There is something unfair about its use. It is hitting below the intellect. I do not understand you, said Sir Thomas, growing rather red. I do, Lord Henry, murmured Mr. Erskine with a smile. Paradoxes are all very well in their way, rejoined the baronet. Was that a paradox? Asked Mr. Erskine. I did not think so. Perhaps it was. Well, the way of paradoxes is the way of truth. To test reality, we must see it on the tightrope. When the verities become acrobats, we can judge them. Dear me, said Lady Agatha. How you men argue. I am sure I never can make out what you are talking about. Oh, Harry, I am quite vexed with you. Why don't you try to persuade our nice Mr. Dorian Gray to give up the East End? I assure you, he will be quite invaluable. They would love his playing. I want him to play to me, cried Lord Henry, smiling, and he looked down the table and caught a bright, answering glance. But they are so unhappy in Whitechapel, continued Lady Agatha. I can sympathize with everything except suffering, said Lord Henry, shrugging his shoulders. I cannot sympathize with that. It is too ugly, too horrible, too distressing. There is something terribly morbid in the modern sympathy with pain. One should sympathize with the color, the beauty, the joy of life. The less said about life soars, the better. Still, the East End is a very important problem, remarked Sir Thomas with a grave shake of the head. Quite so, answered the young lord. It is the problem of slavery, and we try to solve it by amusing the slaves. The politician looked at him keenly. What change do you propose, then? He asked. Lord Henry laughed. I don't desire to change anything in England except the weather, he answered. I am quite content with philosophic contemplation, but as the 19th century has gone bankrupt through an over-expenditure of sympathy, I would suggest that we should appeal to science to put us straight. The advantage of the emotions is that they lead us astray, and the advantage of science is that it is not emotional. Such grave responsibilities, ventured Miss Fitzlure timidly. Terribly grave, echoed Lady Agatha. Lord Henry looked over at Mr. Erskine. Humanity takes itself too seriously. It is the world's original sin. If the cavemen had known how to laugh, history would have been different. You are really very comforting, warbled the Duchess. I have always felt rather guilty when I came to see your dear aunt, for I take no interest at all in the East End. For the future, I shall be able to look her in the face without a blush. blush is very becoming, Duchess, remarked Lord Henry. Only when one is young, she answered. When an old woman like myself blushes, it is a very bad sign. Lord Henry, I wish you could tell me how to become young again. He thought for a moment. Can you remember any great error that you committed in your early days, Duchess? He asked, looking at her across the table. A great many, I fear, she cried. Then commit them over again, he said gravely. To get back one's youth, one has merely to repeat one's follies. A delightful theory, she exclaimed. I must put it into practice. A dangerous theory came from Sir Thomas's tight lips. Lady Agatha shook her head, but could not help being amused. Mr. Erskine listened. Yes, he continued, that is one of the great secrets of life. Nowadays, most people die of a sort of creeping common sense, and discover when it is too late the only things one never regrets are one's mistakes. The laugh ran round the table. He played with the idea and grew willful, tossed it into the air, transformed it, let it escape and recaptured it, made it iridescent with fancy, winged it with paradox. The praise of folly, as he went on, soared into a philosophy, and philosophy herself became young and catching the music of pleasure, wearing, one might fancy, her wine-stained robe and wreath of ivy, danced like a pageant over the hills of life and mocked the slow silentness for being sober. Facts fled before like frightened forest things. Her white feet trod the huge press at which wise Omer sits. Still the seething grape juice rose round her bare limbs in waves of purple bubbles, or crawled in red foam over the fat's black, dripping, slopping sides. Sorry, I almost dropped the book. It was an extraordinary improvisation. He felt that the eyes of Dorian Gray were fixed on him, and the consciousness that amongst his audience that there was one whose temperament he wished to fascinate seemed to give his wit keenness and to lend color to his imagination. He was brilliant, fantastic, and irresponsible. He charmed his listeners out of themselves, and they followed his pipe, laughing. Dorian Gray never took his gaze off him, but sat like one under a spell, smiles chasing each other over his lips, and wonder growing grave in his darkening eyes. At last, the liveried in the costume of the age, reality entered the room in the shape of a servant to tell the Duchess that her carriage was waiting. She wrung her hands in a mock despair. How annoying, she cried. I must go. I have to call for my husband at the club to take him to some absurd meeting at Willis's rooms, where he is going to be in the chair. If I am late, he is sure to be furious, and I couldn't have a seat in this bonnet. It is far too fragile. A harsh world would ruin it. No, I must go, dear Agatha. Goodbye, Lord Henry. You are quite delightful and dreadfully demoralizing. I am sure I don't know what to say about your views. You must come and dine with us some night, Tuesday. Are you disengaged Tuesday? For you, I would throw over anybody, Duchess, said Lord Henry with a bow. That is very nice and very wrong of you, she cried. So might you come? And she swept out of the room, followed by Lady Agatha and the other ladies. When Lord Henry had sat down again, Mr. Erskine moved round, and taking a chair close to him, placed his hands upon his arm. You talk books away, he said. Why don't you write one? I am too fond of reading books to care to write them, Mr. Erskine. I should like to write a novel, certainly, a novel that would be as lovely as a Persian carpet, and as unreal. But there is no literary public in England for anything except newspapers, primers, and encyclopedias. Of all people in the world, the English have the least sense of the beauty of literature. I fear you are right, answered Mr. Erskine. I myself used to have literary ambitions, but I gave them up long ago. And now, my dear young friend, if you allow me to call you so, may I ask if you really meant all that you said to us at lunch? I quite forget what I said, smiled Lord Henry. Was it all very bad? Very bad indeed. In fact, I consider you extremely dangerous, and if anything happens to our good Duchess, we shall look on you as being primarily responsible. But I should like to talk to you about life. The generation into which I was born was tedious. Some day, when you are tired of London, come down to Trentley and expound to me your philosophy of pleasure over some admirable Burgundy I am fortunate enough to possess. I shall be charmed. A visit to Treatley would be a great privilege. It has a perfect host and a perfect library. You will complete it, answered the old gentleman, with a courteous bow. And now I must bid goodbye to your excellent aunt. I am due at the Athenaeum. Athenaeum. No, I said it right the first time. Athenaeum. It is the hour where we sleep there. All of you, Mr. Erskine. 40 of us in 40 armchairs. We are practicing for an English Academy of Letters. Lord Henry laughed and rose. I am going to the park, he cried. As he was passing out the door, Dorian Gray touched him on the arm. Let me come with you, he murmured. But I thought you had promised Maison to go and see him, answered Lord Henry. I would sooner come with you, yes. I feel I must come with you. Do let me, and you will promise to talk to me all the time. No one talks so wonderfully as you do. I have quite talked enough for today, said Lord Henry, smiling. And all I want to do now is look at life. You may come and look at it with me, if you care to. Yay, that is the end of chapter 3. Next time we'll be reading we'll try to read chapter 4 and 5. I hope you enjoyed today's reading. Salamat paya. So much for listening. Remember to be safe. Remember to stay safe. Be kind. And I forget the rest, but do all those good things. And I will see you in the next one. Salamat paya again for listening. Toodles for now.